Hi friends, welcome back to the Hill of Roses, where we come once again to celebrate the best works of the social left and debate the policy positions of the movement that we create together. So in this episode today, we are going to be covering a pretty sensitive topic in terms of the rise of hate crimes under the Trump administration. This is an issue that has had a lot of identities that we can perceive as our largest remaining divide. And so that was the question that I covered with you all this week. So after covering that and what my opinion on the matter is, we'll wrap up by giving a couple of quick proposals from the Southern Poverty Law Center that I think, in addition to universal economic reliefs, will help address the racial inequity of America. So, around our country, hate crimes and discrimination are growing, with countless tragic incidents appearing in the news. Within the past 2 weeks, we have had shootings in synagogues in San Diego. We've had the release of cell phone footage taken by Sandra Bland that was hidden by a police department in Southeast Texas to protect a lying racist officer who had arrested her. And a 13-year-old girl in Bronx Park East was beaten up by 6 other students while they yelled at her, quote, "fake dyke." And I'm sure there are even more accounts than just those 3 I mentioned going across the identities. So I asked you, the community, for this episode, quote, what type of discrimination is the most prevalent and negative? With choices being gender/sexuality, religion, race, and other. The majority of you, 56%, chose race, followed by gender/sexuality, other, with most of the comments indicating that you intended that to mean social economic class, and then finally by religion. Obviously, there are still persistent struggles, just like I had mentioned, when it comes to gender, class, religion, and sexuality. But no form of division becomes as obvious as race. Bigotry rears its head in many ways, some of which are subtly projected. But race, unlike religion or class, are easier to detect, while also dividing larger groups of people up into many more differing buckets than gender does. This can be further evidenced by the rise of hate crime in America for the 3rd straight year, all increases of which have been double digits. And 60% of the 7,100 hate crimes committed last year were on the basis of race, according to the New York Times. Additionally, this official report from the FBI is being put into doubt in terms of undersampling, as only 12.6% of districts reported hate crimes, despite when being interviewed, many of these same districts reporting 0 hate crimes said that those numbers were reported as faulty. One example being Las Vegas, in which the report had recorded 0 when in fact there were 61 committed. From the same report, we also find that of hate crime reports being filed, 50% are from black individuals, despite the black community making up roughly 13% of the population. These hate crime reports also do not include discriminatory practices that are committed at the hands of our government when it comes to organizations like ICE detaining individuals erroneously. 30% of the time, according to a lawsuit filed this past Tuesday by the ACLU. Is it a coincidence that the upward trend started when Donald Trump started running for office? No, I think it's more than a coincidence and believe he is responsible for at least a portion of the rise in the acceptability of hate. Mexico does not send its people here. They do not choose who is coming. Those people are neither the best nor the worst. They are people. Yes, those people have problems, usually economic, and that's why they'd like to come here for the chance of a better new life. And they bring less drugs, crime, and rape into our country as a percentage than our current citizens. Donald Trump has a history of saying very clearly racist quotes. Here's just a handful of others for you all to judge and hate. Quote, sadly, the overwhelming amount of violent crime in our major cities is committed by blacks and Hispanics. A tough subject must be discussed, end quote. Next, quote, LeBron James was just interviewed by the dumbest man on television, Don Lemon. He made LeBron look smart, which isn't easy to do. I like Mike, end quote. In regards to the Confederate statue protests, quote, George Washington was a slave owner. Was George a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? Do you like him? Okay, good. Are we going to take down the statue? Because he was a major slave owner. Now, are we going to take down his statue? End quote. Another one. In regards to this time, the Charlottesville white nationalist demonstrations and counter-protests. Quote, well, I do think there's blame. Yes, I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides, I think there's blame on both sides. And I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. Again, end quote. Now, another one. In regards to deporting undocumented migrants, quote, we have people coming into the country or trying to come in, and we're stopping a lot of them. But we're taking people out of the country. You wouldn't believe how bad these people are. These aren't people. These are animals. And we're taking them out of the country at a level and at a rate that never happened before. End quote. Then, let's take another one. In regards to Colin Kaepernick's Black Lives Matter protest on combating systematic racism committed by the police, that we had even covered in previous episodes, Trump said, quote, wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now. Out! He's fired. He's fired. End quote. So I'm not going to waste any more of your time with dozens, if not hundreds, of other on-the-record quotes from our president showing his support of a vile ideology. I think it's pretty clear that Donald Trump is the greatest divider in terms of race we've had since the civil rights movement of the 60s and adjustment period in the early 70s. And potentially, it could go even further back than that. all of these moments are also only the ones that were taken while Trump has been running for president or serving as president. It doesn't include leading the birther charge against Obama. It doesn't include him advocating wrongfully for the death penalty to innocent young black kids known as the Central Park Five either. Donald Trump is a racist. Full stop. Hate crimes are rising every year he has been in or running for public office. Full stop. So what can we actually do to help this problem beyond removing Donald Trump from office, as we discussed in last week's episode, through impeachment, or by beating him in the 2020 election, that we can actually do to help address the racial hate festering in our society today? Well, as I mentioned earlier, to answer that, we turn to our piece of work we'd like to feature this week by the Southern Poverty Law Center, in which they lay out 10 principles we must embrace to solve this issue. The first principle the Southern Poverty Law Center recommends is act. Quote, do something in the face of hatred. Apathy will be interpreted as acceptance by the perpetrators, the public, and worse, the victims. Community members must take action. If we don't, hate persists. So the ways you can actually act are by picking up the phone to contact members of the community you know to start a conversation, or suggest an action, sign and create petitions to show numbers behind your cause, repair acts of hateful vandalism so that hate is not allowed to persist or intimidate others, use your special skills to help fundraise, and finally, be creative on the way you react to hate in the moment. Don't be a bystander. Social promotions and spreading the cause is good, but social media rallies have a fleeting shelf life as people move their attention quickly to the next subject of outrage. To combat hate, we must do more and take this message to the physical IRL communities. I've begun this by getting involved myself in the DSA, where our local chapter has working groups that help people facing housing discrimination and efforts of immigration justice. The second principle the Southern Poverty Law Center recommends is join forces. Reach out to allies from churches, schools, clubs, and other civic groups. Create a diverse coalition, include children, police, and the media. Gather ideas from everyone and get everyone involved. To do this, you can call upon normal community actors that respond to hate events, especially businesses, schools, houses of worship, politicians, children, and members of targeted groups. Also, it is very important to try and encourage a dialogue with the police to work with them on solutions to combating hate, as they are usually the first responders to accounts of hate, and so making sure solutions come quicker to resolve injustice is important. Furthermore, when injustice is frequently brought by the police to people of color, it is important that they are connected to serving their community rather than divided from the community and are defensive. The third principle the Southern Poverty Law Center includes is support the victim. Quote, hate crime victims are especially vulnerable, end quote. To do this, there are 3 things that need to be done. First, if you are the victim, make sure you report your full account of the story. You're helping support other victims by doing this. Second, speak to the press so that if your locale is ignoring the issue, the transparency provides a disinfectant to that morally diseased behavior. Third, know your legal rights so that you may adequately press charges against hateful perpetrators so that others thinking of doing equally hateful acts reconsider their actions based on the consequences of other cases. The fourth principle the Southern Poverty Law Center advocates for is speak up. Quote, hate must be exposed and denounced. Help news organizations achieve balance and depth, end quote. To do this, they first recommend sharing their resources. We're trying to do here today. You can also read in full for yourself, as I've included it in the description section below. Secondly, they give a list of ideas of topics and questions to bring to the media, such as, quote, the masked mysterious Klansman, like his burning cross, is an emotional image loaded with historical associations. Don't let this cliche control the story, end quote. Second, don't allow hate groups to masquerade as white pride civic groups or heritage organizations. Third, white supremacist and other extremist groups represent the outer fringes of American society. Fourth, take hate crimes and bias incidents seriously and report on them prominently. Monitor the impact of hate on victims and other members of targeted groups. Become an activist against hate, just as you are against crime. And finally, you are a part of a community, and you must be a part of our fight against hate. So, the fifth principle recommended by the Southern Poverty Law Center is educate yourself. An informed campaign improves its effectiveness. Determine if a hate group is involved and research its symbols and agenda. Understand the difference between a hate crime and a bias incident. You're clearly taking a great first step by watching this and learning some context behind the hate and what can be done. To learn about the subject, there are two things that you should strive to know. First, some common definitions such as what a hate crime or bias incident actually is and how they are handled differently legally. Second, try to understand the perspective of how a hate crime may make the victim and the community feel. So then next, the sixth principle the Southern Poverty Law Center recommends is to combat hate is create an alternative. Do not attend a hate rally. Counter-protest confrontations serve the narrative of the perpetrators, as it makes waters murkier for the less informed on saying which side is to blame for the incident. If an event featuring a hate group, avowed separatist, or extremist is coming to your college campus or city, hold a unity rally at a different location. Next, the seventh principle of the Southern Poverty Law Center Hate Combat Plan is pressure your leaders. Quote, elected officials and other community leaders can be important allies, end quote. Anyone who has followed me regularly knows that I have no problem putting pressure on our leaders for their deficiencies, even when they come from our own side of the ideological aisle. To effectively do this, we must form relationships with our leaders before we need them to act against a hateful action. We must educate those leaders on the causes and impacts of the hate. Even well-meaning officials may not know what you know due to their own life experience not having that same experience you did. Next, demand police make a short, serious response regarding the matter, even while they continue to investigate. Similarly, demand the same response be echoed and expanded upon from your local political leader, and to not use language that dances around the hateful action by instead naming the problem directly. Finally, invite leaders to your community organizing events so that you can continue to forge relationships and educate them on how hate is persisting and what can be done. The eighth principle by the Southern Poverty Law Center recommends we all embrace to end hate is stay engaged. Quote, promote acceptance and address bias before another hate crime can occur. To do this, we must expand our comfort zones to build a larger network of individuals engaged on the matter. Some activities that can be undertaken to do this are candlelight vigils, marking history with anniversaries, breaking bread together by holding communal dinners, holding letter writing clubs, creating discussion groups on race, rally as a community on a project that's desperately needed for the community so that different people from different backgrounds get to interact with each other. And finally, take the discussion online like I'm sure many of you are already doing if you're watching this video. The second to last principle the Southern Poverty Law Center recommends is teach acceptance. Bias is learned early, often, and at home. Schools can offer lessons of tolerance and acceptance. Quote. Hate starts at an early age with kids. By age 3, children can be aware of racial differences and may hold the perception that white is desirable. To stop hate from being taught, some actions we can take are examining students' textbooks and curriculum and bringing concerns about inequitable depictions to teachers' attention, exposing your children to more cultures by trying to expand the diversity of your own friend circle, encourage your child to become an activist, examine the media your child is consuming and have a conversation with them if you think a show or site that they're visiting is trafficking in unfair, hateful dialogue. And finally, be a model for your child. Do not conduct hateful behavior yourself. Finally, the last principle the Southern Poverty Law Center recommends we adopt is dig deeper. Quote, look inside yourself for biases and stereotypes. To do this, we must question our underlying biases and look to understand why those biases emerged in us. To start this self-analysis process, the Southern Poverty Law Center recommends you check out movies and books and workshops that have been led by existing or past civil rights activists, as well as answering a list of questions they include in their article. Make sure you go check out their full article and the questions they've included. I have put a link to it in the description section below. I believe the Southern Poverty Law Center is effective in presenting their solutions to this problem because they are both holistic and tactical, because they don't just discuss how to address incidents of hate, but also how to prevent it, but in a manner where we can understand direct actions that each and every one of us can take within our community right now to keep our neighbors and families feeling loved and accepted. So thank you. Thank you, Southern Poverty Law Center, for creating this guide for us all and your work at trying to end hate. So that'll do it, Rosebuds. But before we go, I want to make sure you stick around to hear about 3 fun initiatives I launched this past week for you as a community. First, check out our Terrific Tuesday monthly Democratic presidential primary poll. We have around 270 respondents so far, and so I'd like to keep that growing all month. You can find it along with the real-time results in the description section below. Second, check out Senate Royale over on Twitter. We go one senator matchup at a time to decide who is our best senator, as well as creating a research on a bunch of the details of our senators, including committee memberships, cash on hand, social media following, state size, Trump score, and much more. You can also find this just like Terrific Tuesday by checking the description section below. Third, and finally, make sure you subscribe to our channel over on Anchor at anchor.fm/The Hill of Roses. That way, if you'd like, you can come and have a conversation with me, or leave me a voice message question that I will be using in some upcoming future episodes. So with all that great content for you all to enjoy learning about and participating in, please help us grow our movement by liking or rating what you watched or heard today, subscribing, as well as following us over on Twitter. It's really the only way that we can show that the roses are growing upon our hill. Until next time, friends, stay rosy.